unemployment rate we can categorize into the short run and then the long run. As I said, the short run we name it as the cyclical unemployment. It's following the the economic fluctuation. If it is a recession, the unemployment rate will be higher, and if it is in the booming, the unemployment rate will be very low. So you can already imagine that although we define a range like a 4 to 6%, but sometimes it can fluctuate at the higher or fluctuate at lower. So, and then that if we introduce this using this labor market, demand and supply, as you can see, this is, we mentioned the labor market. It depends on the wage rate. And then we have the demand, which represented the companies hiring us, right? Hiring the laborers. And then also we have the supplies, which is more like, providing the service, providing the labor service. There are like the, two concepts that I needed to introduce you here. First of all, it's called the sticky wages. Also that we have the equilibrium somewhere here, right? But if we have like, the wages higher than the equilibrium, somehow that if we have higher wage, for example, at the W, that means the supply is higher or more than the demand, right? This is the gap. So this is so-called the unemployment. Also, we have this many people willing to work, but since the demand is lower, that means the gap is existing. And then we have a certain number, certain quantity of people not getting a job, okay? So this is more like because of the supply greater than the demand. So we get this unemployment rate. And then let me tell you the reason why that this is downward sticky, okay? The wage is downward sticky. If my company say, hey, I give you a raise, and I would say, hey, very good. So I would immediately accept that. But if the company say that, okay, so next month you get, the way you will cut your salary by 10%, the first reaction is, why, right? So and then I would say, I don't agree with that. In the contract, that's already written down. Many companies, they are not willing to, let's say that to cut the wage, directly cut the wage, and the people leaving. Most of the time, the good people, the good employees leaving, right? Because they're easy to find a new job. Trying to understand this, let's say they introduced the 3 different series. But for me, that's just simple because everyone would say that increasing salary is good, but decreasing, no. The companies, they develop some strategy to handle that. Instead of like, cut the wage, they just reduce the number of employees. Very simple. So they can introduce some, let's say we call it a performance appraisal, right? So, and then they say that, okay, so now we have 5 people, and then we will kind of fire the one that with the lowest performance. It's equivalent to like a 25%, 20%, salary cut, right? There's the two models regarding this, the sticky wage. So again, this is a downward sticky, and then also like, people, in the companies, they are willing, to keep those one that with the experience, right? Because they know this company more than others, because of the, like some European countries that they have very strong labor union. So the labor union will argue for this tax, the wage cut. So in summary, wage is very difficult to decrease in the short run. Also in the long run, it might be true, but in the short run, not true. Economy, getting into trouble, but the wage stays higher. So then that you can imagine, use the diagram, as you can see that if we have the increase of the demand from the demand of labor from D0 to D1, it's okay. Just higher the increase the wage. If the demand decrease from D0 to D1, it should be, the new equilibrium should be here, okay, to this Q1. But actually, because of this sticky wage, and then the wages stay at the same, exactly, they stay at the W0. And then you see this supply and demand, that's the gap we call the unemployment. And then this is what we call the sticky wage cost unemployment. That's the reason behind. In the long run, that everything will moving towards the equilibrium. That's no doubt, right? So that's no, the wage become flexible in the long run. If we are experiencing a prolonged recession, everyone understands that the business, the company is very difficult. Okay, so they are more like willing to give up some of their wages. It's very difficult to define how long it takes, but usually that we say that assume that at that time that following this recession, then the wage will decrease to a certain level. In the long run, that everything will back to the equilibrium. And then we are talking about the natural rate. So the natural rate is, I just mentioned, 4% to 6%. This is the rate that for a, let's say, comparatively growing and a healthy economy, that we have so-called the frictional unemployment. Let's say because people moving from the older job to a new job, right? And then also there's the structural unemployment, as I mentioned, because of like the new, the new position replaced the older position. And then in China, we have some of the position, very interesting position, the toll gate, right, on the highway. And then in China, this was a very good job. They create a lot of position. All of a sudden, because of the development of technology, now we have like everyone know that we have the SunPass can, there's the system that automatically scanning the SunPass, and then we don't need to hire those additional, people to sitting in the toll booths. Although still there are some left, but we don't need that many. But in China, you imagine that we have, a quantity of those kind of employees, and now they are facing layoff. And then all of a sudden, this becomes the structural unemployment. So that's why always I said that when we are young, when we get the chance, we need to push ourselves a little bit into the uncomfortable zone to learn more new stuff, keep learning. And then later on, you would not facing those, challenge or very difficult time. Here in the long run, because of this, reasons that the natural rate of unemployment is, we cannot avoid that. So that also means that the natural rate 4 to 6%, normally speaking, is a healthy unemployment rate. It's not that bad, but lower is better for sure, right? But always that we have to say that that range is already okay, a good indicator. Although we are talking about the unemployment in the short run, but there will be like the long run, back to normal. Why? Because in the long run, because that the expectation of the wages increasing, right? And then every time that we know that the economy is keep increasing, and then we are expecting the higher wage, okay? But all of a sudden, if also in the long run, that the natural growth rate can kind of pause. Technology is not improving quickly, so that we might stop at that time. But everyone is expecting that the higher paid. But actually, that the demand for labor is stay at this one. We should have a new lines, for example, a new lines like this. This is the ideal situation. But now we are stay here. So then the wage is more like higher already, right? So, but then this is more like the long run, unemployment, or we call it the reason of the natural rate of unemployment. This is in the long run about the expectation. If we have this productivity, or we call it the economic growth, which is keep increasing, that's okay. That in this case, that in the long run, that also we have the demand of labor increase, but the wage is not increase immediately. Okay, so it's more like we are holding the wages because we are not sure whether this is the real increase or it's a fake increase. Demand is greater than the supply. This is more like overemployed. One good example is like during the World War II. So because of this, the demand for this labor increased, and all the Americans, they are producing weapons over 24/7. And then this pushes up like this, the unemployment rate even lower. Yeah, so the government, they have like, they develop policy to support those unemployed people. And then also like you have noticed that the new application for this for the unemployment benefits was skyrocket in the past months. And I pretty sure that for May 2020, this will be even worse. That the government is more, I mean, they will come up with some policies to support them, at least, temporarily. Okay, but it is also a dilemma. Why? Because if those people that they get the unemployment benefits, this is more than what they can earn. Are we talking about encouraging them to find a new job, or we're discouraging them to find a new job? Always you will see from different sides. But for me, that I'm not trying to judge that, but always keep in mind that getting employed is better than getting the unemployment benefits. And also the unemployment benefits is only temporary, it's not forever. In the US and in other countries, it's very different. European countries, they offer much better unemployment benefits. But like China's, those developing countries, they offer very, very, how to say that, very bad, unemployment benefit. The short run, we know that we need to, boost our economic growth, or let's say increase our GDP to reduce the unemployment rate. But in the long run, it's different. The government, should do different things, like to increase either the productivity, or let's say to remember the three components of the economic growth, to invest or deepening the human capital, physical capital, and then the technology to increase, the employment, or on the other hand, that decrease the natural rate of unemployment. Okay, so that and then also that's why that the government is supporting the companies to hire or to create new positions. And then also there's another challenge is that how the government, and following those changes, how the government will prepare or help prepare, for those qualified employees. But for us, like individually, we are responsible for that. So I want you to proactively to think about that, instead of passively waiting. Okay, trying to understand the natural rate of unemployment. As I said, it doesn't matter really, like 4.5 to 5.5 or 4 to 6%. That this is always like because we are entering a new, let's say, new age, new time. That the internet, let's say the information, I mean, all is like different from years ago. So now that the job searching are different, and then also like the positions are different from from the older time. The point here is that how to find a job. Okay, so instead of like a temporary job, how you can take advantage of the internet. Okay, how, for example, in LinkedIn, right? And then also like an internal reference, those kind of things. So pretty much it's about the unemployment. And I will see you guys next time. Have a good one.